Level 1, the candidate. You arrive at Scout Sniper School carrying 60 pounds of equipment through Carolina humidity that feels like breathing through a wet towel. The instructors are already watching, evaluating, sorting the pool into categories you can't see, but they can. Potential, marginal, waste of time. Nobody tells you which category you're in. Nobody tells you anything except where to stand and when to move. The attrition rate is 70%. They mention this on the first morning like it's weather information. Just another fact about the environment you've chosen to enter. 7 out of 10 of you will be gone before the end. Some will quit. Some will be cut. Some will simply break in ways that aren't immediately visible but become obvious over time. Your first week is stalking. Not shooting, not ballistics. Moving across terrain without being seen. You low crawl through fields where instructors with binoculars scan for movement, and if they see you, you start over. You build ghillie suits from burlap and local vegetation, transforming yourself into something that doesn't look human, something that blends with the ground and the grass and the shadows between trees. You learn to move inches per hour when necessary. You learn that patience is a weapon more valuable than any rifle. You learn that the sniper's greatest skill isn't shooting, it's becoming invisible. The candidates around you drop out in clusters. One quits after a night exercise that left him hypothermic and questioning his life choices. 2 are cut for safety violations on the range. 1 simply doesn't show up for formation. One morning his bunk stripped, his gear returned, his decision made sometime in the darkness. You stay, not because you're the best, but because you refuse to imagine leaving. Every crawl through mud that gets into places mud shouldn't be. Every hour of stillness while insects explore your motionless face. Every failure that sends you back to the starting line, you file it somewhere it can't touch your resolve. This is what you want. This is who you're becoming. The shooting comes later, and it's harder than you expected. You know rifles. You grew up hunting, putting rounds on target at distances that impress civilian ranges. But precision shooting at 1,000 yards is a different discipline entirely. Wine doesn't just push the bullet, it curves it in patterns that change second by second as it moves through pockets of air with different temperatures and densities. Gravity drops the round in parabolas that require calculation, not estimation. The fundamentals you thought you mastered are foundations you're still building. The final exercise breaks candidates who made it through everything else. 4 days in the field, with minimal supplies, completing stalks under evaluation, taking scored shots under pressure, operating on sleep measured in minutes rather than hours. Your body stops distinguishing between mud and skin. Your mind simplifies to the next task and nothing beyond. The instructors watch for mental collapse as much as physical. Some candidates perform perfectly until something snaps, some internal governor failing under accumulated stress. They're gone immediately, not punished but simply recognized as unsuited. The profession requires a specific psychology that can't be taught, only revealed. You survive. Because you discover something useful about yourself, your mind quiets under pressure rather than racing. The chaos simplifies rather compounds. The harder things get, the more clearly you think. It's not courage, exactly. It's just how you're wired. You graduate in the bottom third of your class. Not spectacular, not shameful, competent. You receive your designation and your orders and ship out to a team that needs bodies more than excellence. Level 2, the spotter. Your team leader is a staff sergeant named Reyes, who has 4 deployments, and eyes that never quite focus on the present. He's killed more people than you've met, and he carries that weight in ways that only become visible after you know him for months. The slight hesitation before entering rooms, the way he positions himself at restaurants to watch every entrance, the dreams he doesn't talk about but everyone hears through thin barracks walls. You're the junior member, which means you spot. The shooter takes the shot, but the spotter does everything else. Range estimation, wind calls, target identification, documentation. You're the shooter's external brain, processing information so he can focus entirely on trigger control and breath and the precise muscle memory that puts rounds exactly where they need to go. Your first deployment is to a country you're not supposed to name, doing things that don't officially happen. The rules of engagement are complicated and change weekly. The enemy wears no uniform and looks like everyone else, until the moment they don't. You learn to read threat in the way people walk, the way they position their hands, the patterns of normalcy that break just slightly before violence emerges. Your first kill as a spotter is a man with an RPG. Reyes takes the shot from 800 meters, while you call the wind and confirm the target, and watch through your scope as the round arrives, before the sound. One moment the man is positioning his weapon toward a convoy route. The next moment he's falling, the biological systems that made him alive simply stopping. The RPG clatters unfired to the rooftop. You expected to feel something more. Triumph, maybe? Horror, perhaps. What you actually feel is professional satisfaction, the same emotion you'd feel after any job done correctly. The shot was clean, the target was valid, the outcome was successful. You filed the man's face somewhere it won't surface unexpectedly, and move to the next task. Reyes watches you after, looking for cracks. He's seen new spotters break at this moment, the abstract suddenly concrete, the training suddenly real. He doesn't see what he's looking for, which might be good, or might be concerning. You don't ask which. Over months you learn things school didn't teach. How to read local atmospherics, the way morning air moves differently than afternoon air in specific terrain. How to improvise positions when the perfect hide site doesn't exist. How to disengage when the shot isn't there. Swallowing frustration because patience matters more than body count. You learn the rhythm of the deployment cycle, the intensity of operations, followed by the strange emptiness of downtime in secure zones where nothing happens but waiting. The way friendships form through shared experiences that can't be described to people who weren't there. The letters from home that arrive already obsolete, describing a world that continues without you. You learn Reyes, his patterns, his tells, his preferences, when he wants input and when he wants silence. The way he breathes before deciding to shoot, and the longer breath when he decides to wait. You become an extension of him, which is what spotter duty requires. Your identity subsumes into the team. Level 3, the shooter. Reyes rotates home after his 5th deployment, taking a training command position that everyone knows is really about the drinking that's gotten visible, and the marriage that's already gone. You attend his farewell with the complicated emotions that military transitions require. Gratitude, relief, grief for a version of him that might have existed without all the shots behind his eyes. His replacement is younger than you, somehow, a new staff sergeant from a different unit, technically senior, but practically dependent on your experience. The power dynamic inverts, without anyone acknowledging it directly. You're the shooter now, because that's what the team needs, and rank accommodates necessity in small units operating far from oversight. Your first shot as primary shooter is anticlimactic. A confirmed hostile at 600 meters, wind steady, conditions perfect. The mechanics work exactly as trained. Breath, pause, squeeze, watch the round arrive, confirm the result, move. It's the hard shots that teach you who you've become. There's a compound in a valley where hostages are held. The intelligence is good, confirmed by multiple sources, time-stamped within hours. 3 Americans, aid workers captured 2 weeks ago, held by a cell that's already uploaded. 1 execution video. The window is small, the approach difficult, the stakes absolute. You set up 1,400 meters out, which is farther than you've ever shot in combat conditions. The wind is variable, shifting direction every few minutes as valley thermals create chaos. Your new spotter calls numbers that keep changing. That might be right or might be wrong. That represents his best guess at physics that doesn't want to cooperate. You wait. Hours. Watching through glass that makes the compound clear despite the distance. The guards rotate on patterns you memorize. The hostages appear briefly in a window. Faces you've seen in briefing photos. Alive for now, but probably not for long. The shot comes at sunset, when the target you need stops at a predictable position for just long enough. You apply corrections that feel partly calculated and partly instinctual. The math and the art combining in ways you couldn't explain, even if you tried. The trigger breaks clean. The round flies true. The guard drops, and the assault begins. And 20 minutes later, the hostages are on helicopters, and you're breaking down your position. And the sun is completely gone. 3 confirmed saves. 3 people who will live because of the shot you made. This feels different than the others. Not better or worse, just different. The weight redistributes slightly. Level 4, the instructor. You return to the school that made you, now standing where the instructor stood, evaluating candidates who remind you of yourself 8 years ago. The cycle continues. The institution persists beyond any individual. Teaching reveals gaps in your own understanding. You thought you knew why certain techniques worked, but explaining them forces deeper analysis. The reasons behind the rules, the principles beneath the procedures. You become a better shooter, by learning to create shooters. The candidates struggle with the same fundamentals you struggled with: trigger control, breath management, the mental discipline required to wait for hours and then execute perfectly in seconds. You watch them break against the difficulty, and you learn to predict which ones will persist. It's not the physically strongest. It's not the naturally talented. It's the ones who treat failure as information rather than verdict, who adjust and continue rather than repeating the same errors while expecting different results. You develop a reputation for harsh assessments and fair treatment. Candidates learn that your criticism is precise, targeted at specific deficiencies rather than general discouragement. They learn that your standards don't negotiate. They learn that graduates from your cycle perform slightly better in initial deployments, which is the only metric that matters. But teaching also distances you from the work itself. You're creating shooters rather than being one. The skills you maintain on ranges feel different from skills tested in actual operations. The edge dulls slightly, not in technique but in something harder to measure. The readiness for violence that combat requires becomes theoretical rather than practical. You miss it. That's the uncomfortable truth. You miss the clarity of operational deployment, the stripped-down focus that combat creates. Training is valuable. Training saves lives. But training is also repetitive and administrative, and full of paperwork that combat somehow never requires. When the opportunity comes for one more deployment, you take it. Level 5, the team leader. The unit is different now. Younger faces with different references, cultural touchstones you don't share, technology that didn't exist when you started. They call you old man, affectionately, which you're not yet but feel increasingly. Your knees predict weather. Your back remembers every hour spent in uncomfortable positions. The recovery time after hard operations stretches from days to weeks. But you lead because experience compounds. You've seen what works and what fails. You've watched good shooters make bad decisions under pressure, and bad shooters make good decisions through discipline. You know which tendencies to trust and which to override. Your team deploys to a conflict that's technically not a war, doing operations that technically don't happen, producing results that technically won't be acknowledged. The targets are higher value now. The intelligence is better. The shots are harder, but the support is more substantial. You take a shot at 1,700 meters, that makes your reputation. Difficult angle, variable wind. Time pressure that didn't allow the usual preparation. The target was moving between vehicles in a pattern that created a window, measured in seconds. You made the shot because the alternative was losing the target, and you made it well, because the alternative was unacceptable. The team talks about that shot afterward. It becomes legend, slightly inflated with each retelling. You don't correct the exaggerations, because morale has value, but privately you know how much luck contributed. The wind cooperated at the critical moment. The target paused slightly longer than expected. Physics worked in your favor when it easily could have worked against you. The shot that matters more is one nobody talks about. A mistake. A target identified and engaged who turned out to be wrong. The intelligence was bad. Your shot was perfect. The outcome was a dead civilian in a place he shouldn't have been, doing things that looked threatening but weren't. Collateral damage in the sanitized language of reports. Murder in the language of honesty. You don't sleep well for months afterward. The faces accumulate anyway. Hostile and civilian alike. But that face is different. That face asks questions your justifications don't answer. The rules of engagement cleared you. The review board cleared you. But the face doesn't clear you, and the face keeps visiting. You learn to carry that weight, because the alternative is not carrying any weight, which means becoming something worse. The soldiers who feel nothing scare you more than the soldiers who feel everything. At least the pain proves the conscience is intact. Level 6, the master. The title is informal, given by peers rather than institutions. It means you've survived long enough to become rare. A shooter who hasn't broken or burned out, or simply been unlucky in the mathematics of incoming fire. It means younger soldiers ask questions they wouldn't ask anyone else, because they know you've seen things their instructors haven't. You rotate between deployment and development, testing new systems that might make future snipers more effective, optics that calculate ballistics automatically, rifles that adjust for environmental conditions, technology that promises to remove the human variables that create failure. But you understand what the engineers don't. The human variables are also what create success. The judgment calls that no algorithm can make. the intuition that comes from thousands of hours behind glass, the moral weight that separates soldiers from machines. Make the equipment too automatic, and you lose something essential, something that keeps the killing bounded by conscience. Your last deployment is your easiest and your hardest. Easy because the operations are routine, if any of this can be routine. Hard because you know it's the last, and knowing changes everything. You watch your team with awareness of ending. You appreciate shots that would have been unremarkable years ago. You document experiences you'll never have again. The final shot is unremarkable. A confirmed hostile at medium distance, standard conditions, professional execution. You don't know it's your last until you're on the transport home, and then you know with certainty that you'll never do this again. 22 years, hundreds of operations. Kills you stop counting because counting felt wrong. You've shaped a generation of shooters who are shaping the next generation. The techniques you developed are being taught to soldiers who don't know your name. What you carry home can't be left overseas. The faces, the sounds, the smell of cordite and copper that triggers memory without warning. The hypervigilance that served you well in combat but serves no purpose at a suburban grocery store. The relationships sacrificed for deployments, the connections that couldn't survive the person you were required to become. But also this, the people who are alive because you were good at something terrible, the hostages rescued, the convoys protected, the attacks prevented by targets eliminated before they could execute plans that would have killed dozens, hundreds, maybe more. The math doesn't quite balance, but it's not supposed to. You did what your country asked. You did it better than most. The scope goes in a case that goes in a closet that you don't open very often. The skills remain, slowly dulling through disuse, available if ever needed, but hopefully never needed again. The identity persists beneath whatever civilian surface you construct, because you can't unknow what you know. Some nights you dream of shots you didn't take, the moments of hesitation, the targets that moved before the decision resolved. You wonder about the lives that continued because you waited, and whether those lives did good or harm in the years that followed. You'll never know. That's the nature of the work. One shot at a time, one breath at a time. The discipline holds until the end.